Please begin Chapter 3, Lesson 6, dealing with adding and subtracting unlike fractions. Alright, let's see what you remember from adding and subtracting like fractions, though. So, 4/5 minus 1/5, write it in simplest form. So answer A, 1, B, 3/5, C, 4/25, or D, a negative 3/5. And your answer is... Find 2 3/8 plus 1 3/8. Write it in simplest form. Is the answer A, 4 3/4, B, 3 3/4, C, 3 4/8. Man, sorry, I'm having problems reading today. Letter C is 3 3/8, or D, which is 2 1/2. And your answer is... Now we're going to find 4 5/6, and from that we're going to subtract 2 1/6, and write that answer in simplest form. It's the answer A, 7, B, 3 2/3, C, 2 2/3, or D, 2 1/2. And your answer is... Now we're going to find A over 12 plus 2A plus 12. I'm sorry, A over 12 plus 2A over 12, and we're going to write that in simplest form. Remember, we can combine like terms, and we can combine when they have the denominators are the same. So is it A over 12, B, A over 4, C, A squared over 6, or D, A squared over 12? And your answer is B, because you'll get 3A over 12, and the 3 and the 12 can simplify each other down to just A over 4. Now we're going to do 6y minus 1 over y, and here they're just letting you know that y is not equal to 0, because that would make it an irrational number. And we're going to write that in simplest form. Is it A, 5, B, 5 over 2y, C, 7 over y, or D, 5 over y? And your answer is D, 5 over y. Now, which addition sentence does not have a sum of a negative 11/15? Is it A, negative 9/15 plus 21/15? Is it B, negative 6/15 plus a negative 5/15? Is it C, negative 6/15 plus 5/15? Or D, a negative 13/15 plus a negative 8/15? And your answer is A. So we've already added and subtracted rational numbers with like denominators. Today what we're going to do is add unlike fractions, subtract unlike fractions. So, an unlike fraction, those are fractions that have different denominators. When we add unlike fractions, we need to rename the fractions with a common denominator, then add and simplify as if we did with like fractions. So in other words, take our unlike fractions, turn them into like fractions, and then solve as we would normally. So we're going to take 3/4 plus 1/7. We're going to write it in simplest form. So they're having you estimate first to give you an idea as to how big of a number we're dealing with. And it's going to be a pretty small number. So we're going to use the common denominator of 28. So we're going to take 3/4 times 7 over 7 and take 1/7 times 4 over 4, so that we have common denominators of 28. So we have 21 28ths plus 4 28ths. We add those together, we get 25 28ths. And that is in simplest form, and when we check it compared to our estimate, it comes out to be a pretty reasonable number. So now find 2/3 plus 1/8 and write that in simplest form. If you're looking for the least common denominator, it's probably 24ths. So answer A, 7/11, B, 1/8, C, 13/24, or D, 19/24. And your answer is 19/24. So now we're going to find 5 6 plus a negative 3/10. And we're going to write that in simplest form. So they're saying it's going to be about 1. So now we're going to change everything, and so that the least common denominator of 6 and 10 is 30. So we're going to change everything into 30ths. So we're going to multiply 5 6 times 5 over 5, and we're going to multiply a negative 3/10 times 3 over 3, and that gives us 25 30ths plus a negative 9 30ths and that gives us 16 30ths, and when we simplify it down, we end up with 8/15. And so our answer is 8/15. Now we're going to find 2 1/8 plus negative 3 2/3. So the first thing we do is estimate, gives us an idea that we're dealing with about a negative 2. Now we're going to rewrite these mixed numbers as improper fractions first. Go ahead and rename our fractions so that the least common denominator of 8 and 3 is 24. And so now we're left with 51 over 24 plus a negative 88 over 24. And when we solve those out, we get a negative 37 24ths, and we can simplify that down to be 3 and 13 24ths. And the answer, wait a minute, it's not negative 3 and 13 24ths. The answer is actually negative 1 and 13 24ths. So something, 24 times 3 does not equal 37. So the answer in red is correct, the answer in black is wrong. Hopefully you got that. So now we're going to find 5 12ths plus 5 9ths and write that in simplest form. And the least common denominator between 12 and 9ths is 36. So the answer A, 1 and 1/24, B, 35 36, C, 10 21st, or D, negative 5 36. And your answer is B. So now find 4 2/5 plus a negative 6 2/3. Write that in simplest form. It's the answer A, 11 1/15, B, negative 2 2/15, C, negative 2 4/15, or D, negative 2 14/15. Remember, convert them into improper fractions first, then solve as you would. And hopefully you're actually solving them and not just listening to me go wah, 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 wah. You'll get more out of it if you actually solve the problems. And your answer is alright, key concept when subtracting fractions with unlike denominators. You're going to rename the fractions with a common denominator, then subtract and simplify as with like fractions. It's just like when you're adding fractions with unlike denominators. First thing we're going to want to do is rename it so that we're dealing with both in the 16ths. So we're going to take 5/8 and we're going to multiply by 2 over 2. So now we have 9/16 minus 10/16. And we're going to add the opposite, so we end with a negative 1/16. That's our answer. So now we're going to take 4 2/3 minus 3 6/7 and write that in simplest form. Same thing, we're going to rewrite them as improper fractions. We're going to rename them with the least common denominator of 21. And so we're going to be left with 96 21st, and from that we're subtracting 81 21st, and we're left with 17 21st. And that is in simplest form. So now you're going to find 11 12ths, and from that you're going to subtract 2 9ths. 36 again is the least common denominator. Write that in simplest form. So here's A, 2/3, B, 25 36, C, 1 and 5 36, or D, 3. And your answer is B. Now you're going to find 3 and 5 6 and subtract 2 and 1/8 and write that in simplest form. So answer A, 1 and 17 24ths, B, 1 and 13/16, C, 2 and 11/24, D, 5 and 23/24. And your answer is A. Alright, Zhuang jogged 3 days this week for a total of 11 and 17/20 miles. If she jogged 3 and 1/2 miles one day and 4 and 1/2 miles another day, how many miles did she jog on the third day? So we know the total number of miles she jogged. What we don't know is what she jogged the third day. So we're going to add the known distances and then subtract that from 11/27. So our equation is going to look like this. We're going to rename 3 1/2 with a least common denominator of 4. And so when we simplify it down, we're left with 7 3/4. And we're going to name 7 3/4 with the least common denominator of 20, because 11 and 17/20 is what we had before. So when we simplify that, we're left with 4/20, or 4 1/10. So she jogged 4 1/10 miles on the third day. So Howard's tomato plants grew a total of 7 and 11/24 inches during the first 3 weeks after sprouting. If they grew 2 1/4 inches the first week and 1 7/8 inches during the second week, how much did they grow during the third week after sprouting? So add 1 7/8 plus 2 1/4 first, then take that total and subtract it from 7 and 11/24. So answer A, 3 1/3, B, 3 and 19/24, C, 4 1/8, or D, 11 7/12. And your answer is A. Hopefully you actually paused the video and solved it and not just listened to me go wah 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 wah. And that